Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my Ultimate Comics Spider-Man Volume 3 review. You can pick this up in hardcover in stores now. So for this volume, we have returning, as usual, writer Brian Michael Bendis. And we also have returning artists who I love, David Marqueux, and new coming artist, I think you pronounce his name like Piep Lars? It sounds like a French name, but hopefully I pronounced that right. So this volume collects issues number 11 to 18 of Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, and we deal with kind of like a huge event that happens, which is called Divided We Fall and United We Stand, which actually is an event that spans across all of the Ultimate Comics titles, including Ultimate Comics Ultimates and Ultimate Comics X-Men. So that's very interesting to see this 3-comic crossover, and to take all the comics, the Ultimate Comics together and put them together is really interesting. So let's get into the comic. Let's talk about the first couple issues, which are issues 11 to 12. These issues are actually dealing with the fallout from Volume 2. You can check out my Volume 2 review if you check my channel, but I'll put a link in the description and as an annotation at the end of this video. But regardless, something I wished, just to really quickly, something I wish they'd done is put issues number 11 and 12 into Volume 2. It seems almost necessary. And the reason why is that it really wraps up Volume 2's storyline. At the end of Volume 2, they decide Uncle Aaron, aka the Prowler, and Miles Morales decide to go after the Kingpin, basically the Mexican version of the Scorpion. He's the Ultimate Comics version. He's kind of a Mexican drug lord, almost like a Kingpin, mobster type deal. And really, what those two issues do, issues 11 to 12, wrap that story up nicely. Really nicely. It's actually some of the best issues in this actual graphic novel. But everything from issues 13 to 18 are basically the Divided We Fall, United We Stand story arc that happens between the Ultimate Comics. So now we're gonna switch over to that. So apparently, through this huge story arc that's happening, we only really hear kind of whispers, and we see a lot of the Ultimates, and they're discussing even in some of the first couple pages of the book, they always have little summaries of what's happening. And what I think this book does well is that it shows you a map of the U.S. and different little points. It's kind of like a chart of different things. What's definitely interesting is because they identify every single different part. Every single state has its own label. So the White is controlled by the government. There's other countries like Texas at one point is a nuclear armed state. And then there's all these different, it actually points out to different kind of story elements, which is interesting because if you look at, there might be an arrow points into one country and says Project Pegasus. What is Project Pegasus? I think you're going to have to read the other Ultimate Comics, maybe the Ultimate Comics Ultimates, or even Ultimate X-Men. So it definitely kind of teases that, but it also tells you what's going on, even if you're not reading any of those comic books. So say, hypothetically, you went to your comic book store and you picked up Spider-Man Volume 3, and you didn't know that this event was happening, and maybe they don't have the volumes out for the other Ultimate Comics. It still does a good job showing you all these different maps of what's happening in the U.S., even when this story is based only solely in New York, really. And the first couple issues are essentially just following Miles Morales, and we only hear kind of when we're actually with Miles Morales, when he's just in civilian life, we only hear little whispers there we only see, even in the art in the background, we see some helicarriers flying around. There seems to be increased activity, which I found very interesting. It's kind of like a you notice it later, like when the shit hits the fan, and you kind of go back, you notice like, oh, there's more helicopters in the air, and then you understand why. And I thought that was very interesting. But the main general story is that apparently there's been some crazy terrorist group known as Hydra, and this is the Ultimate Comics version of Hydra. These are alleged freedom fighters trying to essentially take back America from Shield, and it's basically Hydra, which are a bunch of like, basically Shield deems them terrorists, and the U.S. government deems them terrorists. We don't really see the actions of Hydra until maybe later on, until Hydra actually tries to directly attack the Ultimates and evidently Shield. But we only hear whispers, kind of like we hear about it, but we don't actually see it happening, and which I assume happens in the other comics. But I mean, the U.S. government is a mess. New York is kind of, you know, not even just New York, like in the entire United States is kind of just like at a rest. We only see this in the Shield situation maps that they show you. But essentially, what happens? Hydra, they're a new terrorist group. They're the ultimate versions. They're not, Nazis, which I found kind of refreshing because the whole Nazi thing, I mean, it's getting old. In any type of media, video games, movies, etc. So I like how they're kind of modernized into this kind of terrorist group. So essentially what happens is Miles, he's kind of dealing with the fact of he doesn't really know how to be Spider-Man. He doesn't really know like what to do. He's kind of just fighting random villains, but he has no sense of direction. I mean, he always considers himself like, what would Peter Parker do? And we get, on another note, we get the origin of his web shooters. He gets the web shooters. Spoiler alert, it's probably not even a big plot point, but he gets the web shooters from Aunt May and Gwen Stacy, which is very nice. It's kind of like passing down tradition to the next Spider-Man. So I thought that was very nicely well done. So essentially, this is Miles Morales trying to find himself in the superhero community, and he does. And he gets himself into a kind of a huge full-scale war, and we get some good dialogue in this, specifically with two major characters that really like interact with Miles: Captain America and Spider-Woman. They have their back and forth, and it's very nice. It's definitely like you can definitely tell that they care about him. I think maybe for Captain America, it's more about guilt because he felt that he was the guy who got Spider-Man killed from the original Ultimates comics, which made sense. So on the subject of allies, it's definitely nice to see that Miles is interacting with the other Ultimate Comics characters. He didn't really interact. There's no mention of any like X-Men characters. So if you are an Ultimate Comics X-Men fan, and you're also an Ultimate Comics Spider-Man fan, you're not going to be pleased at all. But if you're an Ultimates fan, then, Captain America's in there, and they kind of have a back and forth, and he says he's going to train. Captain America says he's going to train Miles Morales, and essentially he trains by, trials by fire is essentially what happens in this comic book. I think that's what Bendis was trying to do, is that regardless if Miles has training, his kind of training is this war. So those concepts are very interesting. I guess I can talk about the good and the bad. Good writing, as usual. Brian Michael Bendis does a good job at characterizing a really incredibly, just a really fun, really relatable Spider-Man in the form of Miles Morales. You really feel his pain. He suffers a death in this. I won't say whom, but it is very tragic, and it's done very well. Anything that really happens to Miles, he's very affected by it, and how they kind of execute every single kind of emotional point is very well done. Some of the other good, the art. if you haven't seen my Volume 2 review of Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, I'd said how the art, oh man, that the art was not consistent. But in this, the art is great. Really enjoyed the art. The artists, especially David Marqueux. Hopefully, I'm saying his name right. Probably not, but regardless, he does some amazing action scenes. Especially the other artist, the one with the French name that I can't pronounce. As usual, I apologize. Everything from the action scenes to the action scenes are great. I mean, at one point, just like giant war machine bots just start rolling in, and there's this huge battle in Wyoming, and there's some really great action set pieces in here. Even in like the more calmer, like even just like a meeting between Miles, like the first meeting of Miles and Mary Jane, and different stuff like that. Even the quieter moments are really nicely illustrated. So I definitely enjoyed the art. Now let's get to the bad. The bad, I would have to say, is some plot points get kind of pushed out of the way for this huge event, and some become unresolved. I really don't want to spoil it for you, but one of the points that happens, and they even hype up this point, is essentially what Spider-Woman's connection is with Miles. And I remember it's just, it never gets revealed, and they say they're going to reveal it, but they never do. And I was talking to my friend, and he's telling me, like, yeah, he remembers reading this in, like, the back order, like, the back issues, like, singles, and he remembered, like, in the advertisements for, like, the next issue where it was Spider-Woman and Miles Morales, I think it was the 18th issue, that it was going to be revealed, and then nothing was revealed. And essentially, it took another point that I want to get across is that Hydra takes, I think, maybe halfway through, they introduce Hydra, and not in a very well-executed fashion. It's kind of just like, yep, Hydra are terrorists, boom, done. And, you know, I kind of accepted that, but I think they could have handled that a little bit better. So those are the only 2 points of 2 bad points I have. But regardless, I really enjoyed this. Ultimate Comics Spider-Man still continues to be a pretty damn good series, so I'm going to give Ultimate Comics Spider-Man Volume 3 a 4 out of 5. I definitely liked it better than the first one, or not the first one, the second volume. But with that said, this one did a really good job at still portraying Miles as usual. I think the characterization as Spider-Man is what's really carrying this, and of course the writing, and in this specific volume, the artists that are on this. I'm really enjoying the art and the writing. Bendis knows how to write teenagers, and I'm really enjoying it. Well, that's it for the review. If you want to check out any of the other Ultimate Comics Spider-Man volume reviews, you can click the annotations on the screen or look in the description below. Make sure to like and subscribe to check out some more videos. And definitely, I hope you guys are enjoying Comic-Con 2013. I am. Definitely a lot of awesome news. And as always, I'll see you next time.